Chapter 1086, Do Not Believe in Coincidences. Lu Shu was thinking about how he should explain this to Chaos. When he first received the tridents, he told Chaos generously to eat as many as he wanted as all of the tridents belonged to Chaos. However, he turned the chocolate sticks to the weapons of the Wei Wu army and would never give Chaos any more tridents in the future. After all, magical weapons would have defects and the remaining tridents were used as backups. So, how should he explain to Chaos? Lu Shu said after thinking. Are the leaves yummy? I can get some for you? Chaos was stunned for a moment, it seemed, alright? After all, as long as he had something to eat, he was fine with it. Moreover, the leaves of the world tree was much tastier than the tridents. Taking the opportunity while Chaos' attitude changed, Lu Shu said, I didn't give you the tridents because I pity you. How can I give you something so bad tasting? If I want to feed you, I have to feed you with the best leaves. Chaos was confused. Really? If that was the case, Chaos suddenly became happy again, chirp chirp chirp. Then when shall we go and pluck the leaves? Cough cough. Don't rush, Lu Shu said, we have to first. Lu Shu finally pleased Chaos and caused him to calm down. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. It was not easy for one to raise a child. Hold on, when Lu Shu thought about Chaos, he suddenly got reminded of a friend whom he had not met for a long time. Hai Gongzi. Initially when Lu Shu encountered the Dream Chooser and got his powers sealed, he lost Chang'ing's sword too. When he was in the Luniverse, he felt that it was a pity as he could rely on the Chang'ing sword instead of the tree branches to kill. Now that the Sea's Thief of Lu Shu's fourth layer of celestial map had appeared, although it was a short-ranged sword, he still craved the feeling of terrifying his opponents with the Chang'ing sword. Lu Shu was a candidate who always had a backup plan no matter how confident he was. When he thought about the Chang'ing sword, he went to look for Zhong Yutong. However, when he saw Zhong Yutong, he was stunned for a moment. In the past, Zhong Yutong looked like a middle-aged man and with his increase in rank, Zhong Yutong had always been in a state of turning younger. Besides Zhong Yutong, almost every single middle-aged practitioner in the Heavenly Network was in the same state. Yet now, Lu Shu saw how Zhong Yutong's initially black hair turned gray. The battle with the Black Feather Army had used up too much of Zhong Yutong's energy. As the think tank of the Heavenly Network, he had to be responsible for many things. An outsider viewed the rise of the Longmen Fortress as a miracle but did not know how much hard work people put in behind the scenes. Instantly, Lu Shu felt that the incident when Zhong Yutong intentionally did not pick up his call were things in the past. To be honest, Zhong Yutong did not expect that incident to only be resolved at this point in time. Lu Shu asked, did you guys pick up the Chang'ing sword after I went to the Luniverse? Zhong Yutong said, even if we wanted to look for it, we were unable to find it. The Chang'ing sword was invisible. One could only tell its outline after examining it closely. If there was no fixed parameters for the search, it was like finding a needle in the ocean, impossible. Therefore, only Lu Shu could look for the Chang'ing sword as the sword recognized him by his blood. At a certain distance away from the Chang'ing sword, he could feel its presence. Lu Shu was thinking about whether the Chang'ing sword would cease to exist if he stayed in the Luniverse and did not go back. That sounded wrong. Couldn't Hai Gongzi run back with the sword? To be honest, Lu Shu did not take notice about whether Hai Gongzi could hold the Chang'ing sword and he was not sure if Hai Gongzi could come out after the Chang'ing sword lost contact with its owner. Lu Shu suddenly realized that he had to make a trip to the Changbai Mountains. However, at this moment, Zhong Yutong suddenly brought up another matter. He said, I should make a trip personally to tell you this. After all, you should know this as you are the 9th Heavenly King. Lu Shu felt a sense of solemnness from Zhong Yutong's expression. He asked, what happened? Initially, we thought that the practitioner from the Luniverse had entered through North America accidentally. However, it seems more complicated than what we thought it would be, said Zhong Yutong. Based on some of the intelligence reports I have obtained, I can claim that another force from the Luniverse is plotting a plan. Last Friday, the intelligence personnel of the Heavenly Network discovered people with the slave mark in India. Although there were only a handful of them, it is worth noting as after all, there is no space pathway in India, said Zhang Yutong. You mean someone is keeping slaves in India? Lu Shu said in horror. He thought that such things would occur in North America first. However, unexpectedly, it occurred in India. It had been only 1 week since the last closure of the space pathway. That meant that after that person reached the Earth, he left North America immediately and went to India. In the past, Shi Xuejin had analyzed that the development of force by Cloudy and Tigerji would probably start from India. That was because the region was chaotic, and although there were many practitioners, those who were powerful died after invading the Heavenly Network. Therefore, there was no leader at that moment. Apart from India, the entire Southeast Asia seemed to be in the same situation. Nevertheless, Cloudy and Tigerji did not expand their powers at that region as it had been eyed by someone else. The other party seemed to have gotten hold of the Earth's details. Was this a coincidence or planned? Lu Shu was starting to not believe in coincidences. He gradually realized that he should not have the mindset that everything was a coincidence or he might get killed because of that mindset. However, if someone really made the effort to plot a scheme, who could it be? Lu Shu suddenly felt that perhaps Duanmu Huangqi was a representative that was sent by the mastermind to trick others. Meanwhile, the mastermind started his plan when everyone shifted their focus on the Longmen Fortress. It was an extremely huge scheme as it involved playing a game with 3 masters and 20,000 Black Feather Army soldiers' lives. However, this should not be the case. As the West Lord of Heaven, why would Duanmu Huangqi allow himself to be controlled by others? Or maybe Duanmu Huangqi did not even realize that he was being made use of. Lu Shu was calm. It was not the first time he had met someone who only hid behind the scenes. Chapter 1087, Secretly go on one path while secretly going along another. Where else has this happened, other than in India? Lu Shu asked. Zhang Yutong sighed. We are not sure about the other places, as before you returned, we have seen this symbol, but we can only treat it as a tattoo. Earlier, when we captured the soldiers from the Black Feather Army as prisoners, we asked them about the structure of their society, but we did not have enough time to ask about specific details. At first, we thought that their slave system was similar to that of ours in ancient times, but we did not expect it to be even more cruel in the Luniverse. The slaves are controlled by techniques. It is rather impossible for slaves to rebel, said Zhang Yutong. Thankfully, you're back. Lu Shu's return had helped the Heavenly Network fill in gaps in their information. The information they had obtained from the enemy was not completely reliable. You would not know whether they were telling the truth. You would not know if they were pretending to tell the truth, but actually leading you into a trap. If the Heavenly Network had the ability to capture spirits and question them, like Lu Xiaoyu, it would have been good, but they did not have this ability. Lu Shu would not lie to them. Furthermore, Lu Shu had brought back the Imperial Palace soldiers, who were very familiar with the Luniverse. Zhang Weiyu had not attended classes for the past 2 days. He had worked with the Heavenly Network to provide information on the Luniverse. After learning that the old King of Gods was simply a porter of poems, Zhang Weiyu needed to busy himself with work. Zhang Yutong said, a similar situation has probably occurred in the southwest. They are infiltrating the area very quickly. Heavenly King Nye has led an army to the south. Hopefully, they will be able to find the person behind this. Lu Shu could understand Zhang Yutong's concern. It was very easy to control someone with the mark of a slave. A slave was able to get rid of the mark, but the people of the Luniverse all knew that they would have to endure extreme pain. Many people had tried to do so, but had given up halfway. The only limit was that everyone had limited vitality to bear the mark of a slave. This was also the reason why Zhang Weiyu and the rest had been shocked when Lu Shu accepted the Treaty of Alliance, from over 5,000 people. The Treaty of Alliance provided a smaller burden than the mark of slave, but it was not negligible. It depended on how strong the individual was. A rank 1 expert would be able to control over 1,000 slaves in 1 week. They would reach their limit at around 5,000 people. But with the diverse range of strategies, more than one person might come this time. Furthermore, there was a more important problem. If the practitioners on Earth were willing to submit themselves to a master, they could pass down the methods to control slaves to the practitioners on Earth. Then, it would spread like a virus. Lu Shu never had much hope in humanity. He believed that people would sell their souls to a demon for some benefit. This was very surprising. Duanmu Huangqi had been fighting to the death here, but the person behind the scenes was secretly on one path while going along another. They were using Duanmu Huangqi as a shield. Zhong Yutong's phone rang. He took a look and said, "You should have received the news as well. Everyone has to be careful. The mark of a slave has appeared in the southwest." Lu Shu was stunned. The enemy was very ferocious. They had laid their hands on the heavenly network. Were they not afraid to die? It seemed as if many people had come to Earth from the Luniverse. Are there any ways to get rid of the mark of a slave? Zhong Yutong asked. If you kill the slave owner, the mark of a slave will disappear, said Luniverse. In the Luniverse, slaves who have lost their slave owners are called roamers. Some of them will find a new master and receive benefits, while others will choose freedom. A majority of the soldiers in the Weiwu army are roamers, but they are like ordinary people now. There are no effects on them. Thus, we have to kill the slave owner. Zhong Yutong thought about it and said, this method to control slaves is far too tyrannical. If they are weaker, it is easy for the mark of a slave to be forced on them. Although those being controlled are not a huge threat to us, we still have to be careful. Lu Shu was more optimistic than Zhong Yutong. We can't assume that they will continue to develop slaves. What if they have some escape route? Most importantly, they did not know what the enemy wanted to do. It was like a game of chess. They had to fight with every move. They could not let their enemy rack up achievements. A new piece of news caused Zhong Yutong to furrow his eyebrows. There's a problem. They had controlled the secret practitioner slaves to kill the innocent. Although we have controlled these slaves, we cannot find the slave owner. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. What should they do now? The enemy had made their move. First, they had controlled the secret practitioners as slaves. Then, they had concealed themselves. Even if they had captured the secret practitioners, they could not act freely. If they could not find the slave owners, they could not let these secret practitioners go. But the control relationship between the slave owner and the slave was one-sided. Even if you captured the slave, it was of no use. Has Nieting thought of a solution? Lu Shu asked. If this had happened overseas, then forget it. They did not have the time to care about the lives of others, but it was unbearable if it happened in the territory of the heavenly network. They could not allow the enemy to cause any harm. The information network of the heavenly network was outside the country. Their domestic information was rather weak. As a result, they would not be able to find the slave owners for some time. Furthermore, these slave owners who were hiding might not be from the Luniverse. Slaves could not betray their slave owners. The heavenly network could not obtain information about the slave owners from the slaves. Zhong Yutong said, we can only gather the secret practitioners and prevent the enemy from forcing the mark of a slave on them. We'll think of a solution for the rest. Heavenly King Nye will return tomorrow. A strong surveillance team has been set up in the Longmen Fortress. Hopefully, we will be able to obtain some clues on them based on Heavenly King Nye's analysis. There was a loss of time in between. You might find the perpetrator tomorrow, but a new offender might appear again. Zhong Yutong suddenly looked Lu Shu. Do you have any good ideas? Lu Shu thought about it. Then, he turned and looked at Little Fury. Get the army of mice to go there. I will give you 10 refresher fruits. Increase the number of Class Cs and Class Bs among your underlings. Find the people behind this and bring them back. Suddenly, Little Fury was excited. It had an important responsibility. It was time to show off his skills. Little Fury took out its small notebook and wrote on it. If I can't find them, I will behead myself. Lu Shu's expression darkened. Who did you learn this from? Chapter 1088, Miraculous Transformation. The stakes were very high. Lu Shu had offered 10 refresher fruits for Little Fury to raise the strength of the mice army. Lu Shu had been worried that Little Fury would no longer be able to control the mice army, but after training for a long time, Lu Shu understood that Little Fury was not a typical creature. As long as Little Fury was strong enough, it would be able to control the mice army. When Zhong Yutong saw this, he suddenly gasped in shock. To be honest, they were very worried about the mice army. Like Lu Shu, they had been worried that the mice army would go out of control. When creatures started to mutate, the Heavenly Network had been secretly observing the mice army in Luo City. Back then, the mice were the most ferocious creatures, followed by insects. Mice were omnivorous and would attack other creatures. The entire country suffered from mice attacks, except for Luo City. The mice in Luo City even helped to get rid of the insects. Their speed was worthy of praise. This was the advantage of the mice army. They were big in numbers, but small in actual size. They would be able to fit anywhere. After Lu Shu brought Little Fury and the rest back, Little Fury had been busy for 2 days as well. After it had left, there was a new army of mice in Luo City. But it was not a major problem. Little Fury could defeat them. The mice army had become like a pack of wolves, and Little Fury was their natural leader, even though it was a squirrel. Suddenly, Zhong Yutong realized that he had overlooked Little Fury. It was their trump card in dealing with this dangerous situation. If the mice army was sent to that city, it would be difficult for anyone to hide their whereabouts. They might not be able to enter some houses, but they could quickly find people with the mark of a slave, then conduct a check. After such a long time, we still have to use our temporary manpower. Zhong Yutong laughed. At least they had settled an urgent issue with this solution. Little Fury was unhappy. It took out its small notebook. Who said that we were temporary staff? Can't we be included with the rest of the staff? Zhong Yutong was dumbfounded. This felt like an illusion. But he immediately smiled. Permanent staff. You are now permanent staff. I will register you later. Then, he turned to Lu Shu and sighed. I suddenly feel that you have the ability to mysteriously transform. Before he could finish speaking, Little Fury, who was on Lu Shu's shoulder, started writing angrily. Who is mysteriously transforming? Zhong Yutong was silent. From Zhong Yutong's distress, plus 666. Fine. It was best not to talk about this now. This family was very troublesome. In the past, Zhong Yutong felt an air of arrogance from Lu Xiaoyu. She had murderous intent as well. Now, he felt that Xiaoyu was the cutest one in the family. Compared to Lu Shu and Little Fury, Lu Xiaoyu was extremely cute. Zhong Yutong was confused. Why did the topic suddenly change? Were you crazy? His emotions were all over the place. He sorted out his thoughts and said, the mice army will definitely cause the civilians in Kuan City to panic. We have to make arrangements in advance. Or, we can plan the route that the mice army can take. Furthermore, we have to inform the civilians in advance. If not, it will be a massive problem if thousands of mice suddenly appeared in the streets. Little Fury wrote. No need. Your plan is not meticulous enough. If you let the civilians know in advance, the enemy will look out for the mice army. They might even change their location. This was the first time Zhong Yutong's plans had been questioned by a squirrel. He looked at the sky. Did he wake up on the wrong side of the bed this morning? But he knew that Little Fury was right. From Zhong Yutong's distress, plus 199. Zhong Yutong sorted out his feelings and asked, "What good ideas do you have?" Lu Shu thought about it and said, "We don't have to worry about the appearance of the mice army. Xiaoyu can control Anthony and bring them over, but it will be a problem in the city." Anthony had advanced to Shinsongjing. It was far too easy for him to transport the mice army to the city, although people would rarely think about using masters for such a task. But to Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu, no matter whether Anthony was a Shinsongjing or a Class A, he was just one of their methods. It was not unnatural. Zhong Yutong was speechless. This family had far too many methods to use. Luckily, Lu Shu was a heavenly king. There was just one problem. With thousands of mice, would they cause the civilians to panic? Little Fury wrote, "If we are discovered, it's my loss." The corners of Zhong Yutong's mouth twitched. This family was very impressive. He lethargically waved his hand and left. "As long as you were happy." Now, he had to inform Nie Ting that the mice army was about to head to Kuan City, as Nie Ting was finding a way to settle this issue as well. Little Fury's mice army was a miracle. Needless to say, this was worthy of a celebration in the Heavenly Network. Although they could rely on the mice army to deal with the offenders, what about those overseas? Were the practitioners overseas able to find a solution? If someone stiff like Duanmu Huangqi had come to fight, they could directly fight, but fighting in the dark was very frightening. Furthermore, one could not tell whether there was a plan behind these actions. At that moment, outside Franklin Station in Manhattan, New York, Yu Mingyu hummed as he walked down. He was about to ride the train back home. He was in charge of the entire overseas information network for the Heavenly Network. The moment they received information that a space pathway had opened in North America, he had come here and replaced an overseas soldier, allowing him to go back. Recently, he had discovered the mark of a slave as well. He was looking for clues, but any hints would mysteriously be cut off. He had no choice but to lie low and wait for a good opportunity. The entire information network relied on him. He had the most say overseas among the entire Heavenly Network. Franklin Station was a small station. There was almost no one at night. Only the sound of Yu Mingyu humming, as well as the sound of leather shoes coming into contact with the ground, could be heard in the empty station. There was a lot of graffiti in this small station, but Yu Mingyu was not in the mood to look at them. Instead, he stopped in his tracks. 4 practitioners suddenly appeared in front of and behind him. They all had the mark of a slave on the back of their hands. Yu Mingyu helplessly laughed. How unlucky. The 4 practitioners surrounded Yu Mingyu. The lights in the small station started to flicker. Yu Mingyu drew a small, purple blade from his sleeve. The blade was short, but it was capable of killing. Chapter 1089, Accept the Mark, or Die. Recently, Yu Mingyu had been chasing information on the mark of a slave. The information network of the Heavenly Network existed because of the large overseas organizations. But now, Yu Mingyu had to adjust his deployment and strategy, as the Heavenly Network's enemy had changed. It was not that the large organizations could be friendly and not guard themselves against one another. In the present situation, even if these organizations were a threat, the Heavenly Network did not have to pay much attention to them. The Heavenly Network's true enemy was the slave owners who had secretly come from the Luniverse, as well as the mastermind behind this. But when Yu Mingyu saw the 4 practitioners charging towards him, he grew tense. How were they so savage? Since when had he been targeted? From the looks of things, these practitioners were North American practitioners who had been turned into slaves. The slave owner had not appeared. Wait. One of the slaves looked familiar. He seemed like a member of the Phoenix Society. When the Luniverse turned its attention to the Earth, even a top-notch organization like the Phoenix Society could not escape. It was also very difficult for them to protect their own members. Once the mark of a slave was forced upon someone, they would completely lose their freedom. Yu Mingyu held the purple blade and clashed with the 4 slaves. Before he could think of a solution, a train suddenly pulled into Franklin Station. The train doors opened. The white lights in the train illuminated the dim station. There were only a few people in the train, all of whom had just ended work. They saw Yu Mingyu and the rest. Then, their first reaction was to find a place to hide and secretly observe. There were many cases of slaves killing people in North America. These slaves did not seem to have any aim in killing these people. They spontaneously killed whoever they wanted to kill and left after they were done. This caused the ordinary people to panic when they saw the news. In the past, they were worried that metahumans would lose control and attack ordinary people. However, it seemed as if they could live in harmony with one another in the past. They did not know what happened recently. Some metahumans seemed to have gone crazy and started to murder people. The relationship between ordinary people and metahumans had returned to square one. The news reported on this without restraint, but very few people knew that this was a true crisis. This time, they had to face a true demon. Ordinary folk were treated as ants in the Luniverse. The rigid hierarchy was like a cage. The practitioners at the top would not treat those below them as humans. The train doors closed very quickly. The train was about to travel to the next stop, but the 4 slaves took action. A metal-type metahuman instantly controlled all the metal parts in the station and aimed them at Yu Mingyu, including the train. The passengers in the train screamed in fear. They were afraid that they would be involved in the conflict between practitioners. The train accelerated. They could only pray that they would be able to leave as quickly as possible. After tonight's incident, they might not dare to take a train for the rest of their lives. The train suddenly flew out, as if it had been pulled along by someone. Countless metal parts flew towards Yu Mingyu like bullets. But something unexpected happened. Suddenly, Yu Mingyu's body went soft. It was as if his entire body had escaped the gravity of the earth. His body contorted into mysterious poses, allowing him to dodge the wave of metal parts. If Lu Shu was there, he would have been able to recognize this. It was the unusual body trick from the collection of gods. Lu Shu had experienced the unusual body trick from the collection of gods many times. Furthermore, before Yu Mingyu had returned to China, he had been hiding in the collection of gods. While he acted as a famous international assassin, he hid in the collection of gods. He was caught by an informant and had to retreat. In the end, he was replaced by Lu Shu. He had not wasted his time in the collection of gods. He learned the training techniques of the collection of gods, including the unusual body trick. The 4 metahuman slaves were all Class Cs. They were very strong. But they did not expect Yu Mingyu to possess the speed of a Class B, he was even faster than a Class B. This attack had come suddenly, but strength was the foundation of a practitioner when they faced any danger. Even if 4 Class Cs worked together seamlessly, they would not be able to kill a Class B. In the blink of an eye, Yu Mingyu stood in front of 2 metahumans. The blade in his hand was like a purple thunderbolt that flashed past, drawing blood from their necks. Instant kill. The 2 people behind Yu Mingyu had arrived. The temperature in the small station suddenly rose. Yu Mingyu could even smell his hair burning due to the high temperature. There was a fire-type metahuman. He hurled the blade at the fire-type metahuman, piercing through his neck. The enemy did not even have the time to react. The next moment, the blade flew back, piercing through the 4th slave. But when the purple blade returned to Yu Mingyu's hands, someone suddenly fell from the ceiling. He was even faster than Yu Mingyu. If Yu Mingyu had displayed the strength of a peak Class B, this person was slightly faster than him. The person caught the purple blade before Yu Mingyu. Then, he reached Yu Mingyu's neck. It was a middle-aged man. He smiled. Your strength is not bad. I didn't expect to meet such a strong slave this late. Accept the mark, or die. Suddenly, the middle-aged man placed his finger on the back of Yu Mingyu's hand. Yu Mingyu seemed to have sensed something. He felt something being added to his willpower, which might cause him to lose his freedom. It was complete. The middle-aged man broke into a smile. Although he had lost 4 slaves, obtaining Yu Mingyu gave him a pleasant surprise. Suddenly, he felt pain in his chest. He looked at the blood that had appeared at the edges of his mouth with disbelief. How are you able to attack me? The middle-aged man saw that Yu Mingyu's expression was twisted, as if he was enduring extreme pain. Of course, the middle-aged man understood that he was using his willpower to get rid of the pain from the mark of a slave. Yu Mingyu was able to immediately eliminate the mark of the slave just after accepting it. He could not understand what had happened. He only knew that he had experienced something very strange. He had guessed that they would be involved in a major battle, but as he was from the Luniverse, he had much more experience in war. He had expected the enemy to give up without resistance. But he did not expect the enemy to be able to escape the mark of a slave. This was a surprise. Yu Mingyu suddenly gritted his teeth and said, "How refreshing." The middle-aged man was confused. Then, he died. When Yu Mingyu encountered this group of people, he could not conceal his happiness. He was never afraid of the pain that the mark of a slave would bring. Chapter 1090, The Contributions of the Mice Army. Yu Mingyu stood alone in the train station. His surroundings were silent. The blood of the slaves and slave owner continued to flow. He adjusted his clothes and walked out of another exit. Many people might come here soon, for example the Phoenix Society. Yu Mingyu knew about the recent and frequent disappearances of metahumans. This had come to the attention of the Phoenix Society. Thus, since the battle in the station had been seen by others, the Phoenix Society would definitely rush over. If Yu Mingyu was discovered, his job would be over. He would have to retreat as quickly as possible. At first, Yu Mingyu was rather worried about the mark of a slave, but he had received information from Zhong Yutong yesterday. It was very easy to get rid of the mark of a slave. All he had to do was endure the pain. When Yu Mingyu heard about this, he suddenly wanted to try it out. What was with the excitement in his heart? The information network in North America had set its eyes on a metahuman with the mark of a slave. Then, Yu Mingyu pretended that nothing had happened. He displayed his metahuman abilities in front of them, and waited for the fish to bite. Yu Mingyu felt particularly happy about his job this time. Furthermore, they seemed to have a habit. They were not worried that their slaves would betray them. This was Yu Mingyu's greatest weapon, as his counterattack would then take them by surprise. Yu Mingyu felt that he had been born to deal with the slavers from the Luniverse. As Yu Mingyu walked, his phone lit up. His expression grew serious. The mark of a slave had appeared elsewhere. The new area was not a city, a region, or even a country. It was a continent. This time, it had appeared in an island country. The slave owners who had come from the Luniverse seemed to have a plan. They infiltrated various areas like a disease. This was a disaster that was hard for Earth to escape from. It was a planned disaster. Anthony transported the mice army to Kuan City at a very fast pace. They reached the city within a day. Anthony even had enough strength to transport the mice army back. Anthony had gained this ability after advancing to the Master Realm. From now on, the Weiwu army did not need to use carriages in fights. Anthony was like a cargo ship. Everyone could conserve their strength and store up energy. Then, they would deliver a decisive blow when the enemy least expected it. In reality, when Zhong Yutong discovered that Anthony was this strong, he was shocked. Luckily, Anthony was on their side. What if he was their enemy? If thousands of people suddenly appeared at the Longmen Fortress, they might be able to defeat them, but the defenseless logistics team in the fortress would be done for. This time, Lu Shu did not follow them. There was another sudden occurrence elsewhere that he had to attend to. After Little Fury arrived in Kuan City, it quickly deployed the mice army. First, the mice army observed the surroundings through the holes in the cover of the inspection shafts. Then, they deployed a few mice in the deserted areas. After that, they sent a few smaller mice to the air vents of the bathhouses. According to Little Fury's understanding, it had to find people with the mark of a slave. The bathhouses would be the place where it was seen most easily, right? At first, the Heavenly Network suddenly thought that Little Fury was not reliable. The mice army did not seem very active. They seemed to wait idly for opportunities. But something unexpected had happened. Within a short period of 2 hours, the mice army had found 3 secret practitioners with the mark of a slave. Furthermore, Little Fury informed the Heavenly Network action team about their position, and they were captured. Up till this point, Little Fury had not made its move. It continued to wait patiently. Furthermore, Little Fury had recently eaten 2 refresher fruits. It had been a peak Class B, and was going through a period of rapid growth. It might advance to Class A very soon. When it thought about how it would be able to fly in the sky, Little Fury was rather excited. Many people did not have much hope in the mice army. They did not think that they would be able to capture the slave owners. After all, a group of mice capturing a practitioner was rather strange. Furthermore, the Heavenly Network security formation in Kuan City did not know much about Little Fury. They only knew that a group of mice was being sent over. They did not know how many mice were coming either. Furthermore, after the mice army came, they requested to work with the security formation. The mice could not appear outside at will. They did not know that this was to prevent anyone in the Heavenly Network from having the mark of a slave forced upon them. If the enemy knew about the movement of the mice army through this, then the plans of the mice army would be meaningless. All of them waited in the Kuan City headquarters. Once they received information, they would capture someone and come back. In the past, they had discovered many secret practitioners with the mark of the slave on their bodies, but these practitioners had gone into hiding before they could be caught. But now, they slowly realized that in less than half a day, the secret practitioners that they had noticed before had all been captured. Furthermore, the actual numbers far exceeded their estimations. At first, they had thought that at most 20 people had become slaves in Kuan City, but they had captured over 40 people. The numbers continued to increase. At this moment, they received a new piece of information. They had found the slave owner hiding in Kuan City. He was showering at a bathhouse in the east of the city. Suddenly, everyone was excited. They had found him? How? They knew that this was the work of the mice army. They did not expect a miracle to arrive. At this moment, a member of the Heavenly Network from the Longmen Fortress smiled. All of you are too young. Do you know the history of the mice army? Someone asked curiously, what history? Wasn't the mice army nurtured by the Heavenly Network? The member of the Heavenly Network who had spoken shook his head and laughed. The mice army was nurtured by the 9th Heavenly King. Their king is Little Fury, who is by the 9th Heavenly King's side. Isn't it a squirrel? They are all gray mice, they were confused. Even Little Fury and Lu Xiaoyu were famous as Lu Shu was very well known. Furthermore, Lu Xiaoyu was the 11th Heavenly King. It was impressive for a family to have 2 Heavenly Kings. But how did a squirrel lead a group of gray mice? The member of the Heavenly Network who had cleared everyone's doubts sighed. I don't know what happened either. The Heavenly Network went into action. Their most pressing matter was to find the slave owner. They would only be able to save the slaves being controlled once they found the slave owner. The slaves were their own people.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, then we just put 'em on the shelf. Try to look to the heavens,